Good morning, everyone. Nice to see you all again back in Assembly Judiciary. Welcome to everyone here in Carson City, as well as anyone that may be in Las Vegas, and of course, watching online through the internet or through Nellis. With that, Secretary, will you please take the roll?
Assemblywoman Bilbray Axelrod. Assemblywoman Cohen.
Here.
Assemblywoman Considine. Assemblywoman Gallant.
Here.
Assemblyman Gray. Assemblywoman Hanson. Assemblywoman Hardy.
Here.
Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch.
Here.
Assemblywoman Marzola.
Here.
Assemblywoman Mosca.
Here.
Assemblywoman Newby. Assemblyman Orentlicker.
Here.
Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong. Assemblyman Urick. Chair Miller.
Here, thank you. And will you please mark members present when they arrive? With that, just a few reminders again, asking that everyone turn down any electronic devices that they have that could be disruptive during the hearing. We will have public comment at the end of today's meeting. And also just a reminder, because I know we've had a few days not in committee, but just a reminder whenever you have a presentation or anything to make sure that you get your materials into the committee at least by noon the day before. With that, we will go ahead and get started. We have two hearings today. The first one will be Senate Bill 67. So I will open the hearing for Senate Bill 67. This will be presented by Chris DeRico, Chairman of the Nevada Board of Parole Commissioners, and it revises the definition of the term sexual offense for the purpose of certain provisions relating to parole. So, Mr. DeRico, when you're ready, please begin.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Miller, Vice Chair Marzola, and all members of the Assembly Judiciary. My name is Chris DeRico, and as stated, I am the Chairman of the Board of Parole Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to present on SB 67, which is a cleanup bill. I'd like to start with a historical background. In 2006, the federal Adam Walsh Child Protection and Safety Act of 2006 was enacted to protect the public by establishing a comprehensive national system for the registration of sex offenders and offenders against children, which included, without limitation, the establishment of a uniform nationwide system for the registration of and community notification concerning such offenders. In furtherance of this purpose, the Act required each state to enact laws regarding the registration of and community notification concerning sex offenders and offenders convicted of a crime against a child which conform to the provisions of the Act. States which did not enact such laws by the date provided in the Act would not receive certain federal funds. In 2007 legislative session, AB 579 was introduced and later approved on June 13, 2007, which is now included in NRS 179D. The term sexual offense was specifically defined in AB 579, which is now a part of NRS 179D.097. The new changes to the laws regarding registration of sex offenders and offenders convicted of a crime had an effective date of July 1, 2008, but were not implemented in Nevada in 2018 due to litigation. Because the law was enjoined when the definitions of sexual offenders were placed into NRS 213, those definitions did not refer to NRS 179D, but instead provided for the then current language contained in NRS 179D. Now that the Adam Walsh Act is unenjoined, we would like to clean up this and ensure that the same definition is being used throughout the statutes. We're requesting that this be reviewed and are hopeful that you will determine that the term sexual offense may rely upon this term as stated in NRS 179D.097. The issue is that there are other statutes within NRS 213 that have differing definitions of sexual offense, and they don't all coincide. For example, there's a definition in NRS 213.107 subsection 8, and another in NRS 213.1214 subsection 6D. This bill revises the definition of sexual offense for the purpose relating to parole to make the definition consistent with the definition of the term used elsewhere in NRS. Passage of this bill should provide greater clarity with regard to this definition, specifically with NRS Chapter 213. I want to point out that with respect to Section 3 of the bill that refers to NRS 213.1214, this statute directs the NDOC on which individuals require a mandatory sex offender assessment. By enacting these changes, we will be using the same definition of sexual offense in all parts of NRS 213. If an individual must register as a sex offender in this state, per NRS 17D.097, all offenses that trigger these registration requirements in our state will properly be assessed using a sex offender assessment tool, usually the static 99R, prior to a parole hearing. The sex offender assessment is another tool for the parole board to review the risk of a qualifying offender to reoffend sexually. This is critical information the parole board should have in all cases, and it would be best to have all individuals that must register as a sex offender be assessed in this manner. There's not been an update to NRS 213.1214 since 2015, and we are trying to correct that to coincide with the definition in NRS 179D.097, which was finally implemented in 2018. If you have any questions or concerns regarding this, I will do my best to answer any questions or provide any follow-up as necessary. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Mr. DeRico. I do not at this time, just giving members a moment, see any questions. Second House bills are. So with that, I will go ahead and open it up for testimony. If there's anyone here in Carson City that would like to testify in support of Senate Bill 67, please come forward. Is there anyone there in Las Vegas? I'm not sure there's anyone there in Las Vegas, unless they're behind that pole. People like to sit there. Broadcasting, will you please open the lines for anyone that would like to testify in support of Senate Bill 67?
To testify in support of Assembly Bill 67, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. There are no callers choosing to testify in support at this time.
Thank you. Then I will open it up for testimony in opposition. Is there anyone that would like to oppose Senate Bill 67, starting here in Carson City? Not seeing anyone in Carson City or Las Vegas. Broadcasting, is there anyone on the line?
To testify in opposition of Assembly Bill 67, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. There are no callers choosing to testify in opposition at this time.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone here in Carson City that would like to testify in neutral of Senate Bill 67? Not seeing anyone? Not seeing anyone in Las Vegas. Broadcasting, is there anyone on the line?
To testify in neutral to Senate Bill 67, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. There are no callers choosing to testify in neutral at this time.
Thank you for that. Mr. DeRico, would you like to make any final words?
Thank you, Chair Miller. The only final words I have on this is I hope the rest of your day goes as smoothly as this hearing did today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And with that, I will close the hearing on Senate Bill 67. Actually, here in the Assembly, we've been having an amazingly smooth go at it through deadline. So thank you for that. I anticipate the same, although I think you might have broke the record for the shortest judiciary hearing ever. So mark that on the calendar. Our next hearing today is Senate Bill 129, presented by Senator Krasner. Senator, do you have some co-presenters? Okay, I'll let you introduce once you get started. Senate Bill 129 revises provisions related to certain civil actions involving sexual assault. So your hearing is officially open, and whenever you are all ready, please proceed.
Thank you very much for allowing me to be here today, Chair Miller and honorable members of the Assembly Judiciary Committee. It's just wonderful to be back here. I will be presenting Senate Bill 129, and with me I'm honored to have our expert psychiatrist, Dr. Barry Cole, beside me, and Serena Evans with the Nevada Coalition to End Domestic and Sexual Violence. With that, I will begin. Good afternoon, good morning, Chair Miller and members of the Judiciary Committee. For the record, I am Senator Lisa Krasner, proudly representing Senate District 16. I appreciate the opportunity to come before you today and present Senate Bill 129. This bill makes important and I would say long overdue changes to the way we handle justice for victims of sexual assault in Nevada, specifically with regard to a civil action brought by a victim of sexual assault against a perpetrator. Let me provide some brief background on why I chose to sponsor Senate Bill 129. I have been working on improving our statutory scheme relating to sexual assault for many years. In 2017, I sponsored Assembly Bill 145, which extended the statute of limitations on civil actions relating to sexual assault of a minor, a child, including for damages arising out of a minor appearing in pornographic material. In 2019, I sponsored Assembly Bill 142, which removed the statute of limitations for prosecuting sexual assault if the identity of the person accused of the assault is established by DNA evidence. And in 2021, I was proud to co-sponsor with Senator John Darrell Loop Senate Bill 203, which among other provisions eliminated the statute of limitations for a civil action to recover damages for sexual abuse if the sexual abuse or sexual exploitation occurred when the victim was less than 18 years old. That bill abolished the statute of limitations for sexual assault for minors. As you can see, improving these types of laws and advocating for justice for victims of sexual assault has been a passion of mine for quite some time. And I might want to add, it's been a passion for all of the members of the legislature, because every single one of those bills I've mentioned to you since 2017, many of you have signed on as a co-sponsor, and they have all passed unanimously in the Assembly, in the Senate, every Republican, every Democrat, and all signed into law by various governors, Governor Sandoval, Governor Sisolak, and hopefully now Governor Lombardo. While the legislature of Nevada has abolished the statute of limitations on civil actions brought for sexual assault if the victim was a child at the time of the offense, this bill digest points out we only have a 2-year statute of limitations for civil actions to recover damages for injuries arising from the sexual assault of an adult, a person who's 18 or older. Yeah, hard to believe, right? So not only do we provide a very short time period for such a lawsuit to be filed, we also do not currently include the term sexual assault in our civil statutes governing these types of actions. Those two reasons are why I bring SB 129 before you today. Psychiatrists, psychologists, and other professionals who work on behalf of sexual assault survivors will tell you that it can take many, many years, if not most of one's lifetime, if ever, for a victim to gain the strength and courage to come forward and report their abuse, if in fact they ever feel safe coming forward at all. I have an expert witness here with me today who can speak to the trauma involved in sexual assault and sexual abuse, and to the years and years of work it takes to heal these wounds and start to become whole. Before I invite others to testify, I would like to quickly go through the provisions of the bill. Section 1 sets forth the guidelines for a victim of sexual assault who was an adult, age 18 or older, at the time of the assault, to bring a civil lawsuit against an alleged perpetrator or a person who was convicted of the sexual assault. Such an action can be brought at any time after the assault occurred. In other words, there is no statute of limitations on these types of civil lawsuits. Additionally, if the plaintiff's alleged injury is the result of two or more acts that constitute sexual assault, the plaintiff is not required to identify specifically which of those acts caused the alleged injury. Section 1 also imports into Chapter 11 of the NRS the definition of sexual assault that is found in Chapter 200.366 of the NRS. That chapter defines what sexual assault is for the purposes of establishing criminal guilt. This is necessary because, as I mentioned before, we currently do not have this definition in the relevant civil statutes, which forces a person who wants to file a lawsuit to do so using other terminology that is not specific to sexual assault, and in my view is not sufficient to describe the seriousness of the crime of rape. Section 2 of the bill inserts language necessary to make clear that a suit alleging sexual assault is not subject to the statute of limitations that otherwise applies to actions brought under this chapter of NRS. Section 3 sets forth that provisions of this bill apply retroactively to any act constituting sexual assault, regardless of any statute that was in effect at the time the sexual assault occurred. Finally, Section 4 makes the bill effective upon passage and approval. What I want to say that's not in my comments here is that this isn't a slam dunk. This is not a slam dunk for a victim of rape. They first have to get the courage to come forward. And statistically, it's less than 25% of rape victims that do have the courage to come forward and report the crime. It could be even lower, but that's what it's thought to be by experts. They still have to find an attorney that'll even take this case, and there's not that many attorneys that will. God bless those that will. And then they have to go in front of a court of law. They have to go in front of a judge and jury. They have to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. That might be hard to do, and they might lose. But why not leave the courtroom doors open for these people? Why not leave the courtroom doors open, at least give them opportunity to feel like there is some justice in the world if they have the courage to bring the case and they can find an attorney to bring the case. Now I'm going to introduce my expert psychologist, Dr. Barry Cole. Thank you.
I get a new role. Barry Cole, B-A-R-R-Y-C-O-L-E. This will not be in neutral. This will be in support. I want to start as a psychiatrist for 42 years by saying I am still amazed that when I do geropsychiatry, people over the age of 55 in specialized units, I'm talking with people that are 60, 70, 80, and they're still describing sexual assault. This is not historical, except when the act occurred, it's still alive in their mind right now, and it's still a cause for their grief, for their suffering, and they're still dealing with the long-term consequences of what has happened to them. The events may be decades old. They may have been intoxicated. They may blame themselves for what happened. Who knows what the circumstances were, but 129 does give some redress for them. In the 1980s, and I want to take you back for a few years, a colleague of mine at University of Washington up in Seattle, Judith Turner, very famous psychologist in the pain management world, published that those living and suffering with chronic pain in the 80s had a 1 in 3 probability of having been sexually assaulted. That was a common denominator. Over the many years I've practiced as a psychiatrist, as a pain management specialist, I've treated so many men and women who've been the victims of sexual assault. You may remember in another situation, I think I testified to the fact that I was trained to always ask each patient, have you ever been touched in a way or a place that now you realize was wrong? Maybe you didn't know it then, but now for sure you know it's wrong. I expected this to be a rarely answered question in the affirmative. To my horror, in psychiatry, it's virtually the majority. I hear this commonly. And for these men and women, the stuff that happened remains the stuff of their nightmares today. And if you don't think psychiatrists have feelings, I have a hard time sitting for 8 hours and listening to horror, and it doesn't affect me in any way. And I pray it never gets so routine that I become numb to this. I want to be affected by what I hear. These same people that were in chronic pain in the 1980s, if they're alive today, they're still in chronic pain. That's the problem with chronic pain. It lasts more than 6 months. So their perpetrator probably escaped criminal prosecution long ago. Use Harvey Weinstein as a classic example. This man operated for decades. But SB 129 does allow victims to reach out civilly from the past and to be recognized and compensated. I won't begin to say that I play an attorney on television, but I kind of along the way picked up something about tort law. And as I understand tort law, there was a duty. Somebody shouldn't have been a pig who was a pig, just to put it bluntly. They did some outrageous behavior. There was a duty that was breached. You were the stepfather. You had a duty to take care of your stepdaughter, and you didn't. Some harm occurred. Could have been physical, could have been emotional. There was an injury. That injury could be moral, could be PTSD, could be ongoing depression and anxiety. But now there's ongoing relationship challenges. It's hard to make relationships as the victim of sexual assault. And that compensation might at least help someone receive the late services that should have been provided 30 and 40 years ago could be provided today. That even though this is past, we can still do something to treat it today. 129 clearly allows victims to be compensated, which I guess in our society is the only means by which they can get some justice in the same system that basically failed them decades ago. This isn't about retribution, this isn't about vengeance, but it is about fairness, it is just, and it's absolutely about time that a bill like this gets passed. That's why I'm supporting SB 129 as a psychiatrist, and I hope that you'll work the work part of it and give it a due pass today. This is important enough. We could just do this today. Thank you.
Hard to follow that act, but good morning, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Serena Evans, SERENA-EVANS. I'm the Policy Director for the Nevada Coalition to End Domestic and Sexual Violence. Recovering from sexual violence is a lifelong process, with each victim survivor's response being extremely unique and personal, which is why we're in strong support of SB 129. What justice and healing look like to one victim survivor may not be the same for another. We know that the criminal justice system does not always yield the results that victim survivors wish, and that engaging in the criminal justice system can be extremely draining and re-traumatizing to go through. Abolishing the statute of limitations for civil proceedings creates another avenue for victim survivors to pursue justice and accountability against their perpetrator. It's not uncommon for victim survivors to shut down emotionally and not be ready to talk about their experience for years or decades later. Or like my colleague Dr. Cole mentioned prior, many individuals don't identify as a victim survivor until years and years later. This should not mean that they are denied options for justice. Abolishing the statute of limitations is a victim-centered approach. We thank Senator Krasner and this body for continuing to be strong advocates and allies for victim survivors. And in closing, I do just want to remind you all that April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, so it's incredibly timely that we are hearing this bill today. And tomorrow we will be celebrating Denim Day here at the legislature. And if you don't know, Denim Day is an international awareness day to stand in solidarity with victim survivors and end victim blaming. And so I hope that you all pass this measure and join us tomorrow in taking a stance. Thank you.
Chair Miller and members of the Assembly Judiciary Committee, that concludes my presentation of Senate Bill 129. I sincerely thank you for the opportunity to present the bill, and I thank the survivors and experts who have joined me and will be joining me here today to testify and demonstrate why this is a much needed and appropriate update to our laws addressing sexual assault. It's time to give victims the voice they deserve and the tools to achieve some measure of justice and compensation if that's what it takes for them to get maybe the therapy that they need for the wrongs they have endured. The bill keeps the courtroom doors open. for victims of sexual assault. I hope you'll join me in supporting SB 129, and now I would like to invite all of the people in support to come forward. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you, Senator. But before we do that, are you open for questions?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I apologize. Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
That's okay. With that, our first question is from Assemblywoman Newby.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and thank you, Senator, for bringing this bill. My question is on a portion that you went over briefly, Section 1, Subsection 1, where if there's a series of 2 or more acts constituting sexual assault, the plaintiff is not required to identify which specific act. I was hoping that you would go into that, or maybe Dr. Cole could. I'm assuming that this is supposed to reflect a situation where there's long-term and systemic abuse, and not identifying one particular time that happened, but kind of considering the whole thing. But could you talk a little bit more about that, because it is a little bit unusual?
So actually, that's existing law, and that's not anything that I'm modifying or changing.
Okay, it looks like it's new language.
To my understanding, that is not new language. That is the existing law, and it's nothing that I am modifying or changing. That's the existing statute.
We will have legal jump in on this one.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, that's the existing law that's in NRS 11.215, which applies to minors. So we just took that from that statute.
Thank you.
Assemblywoman Newby, does that answer your question? Okay. So could you ask your question again, please?
Thank you. The question was really about the not identifying one time, but over a period of time. So maybe if Dr. Cole could respond to how that impacts victims.
Through Chair Miller
Please go direct.
to Assemblywoman Newby, Barry Cole for the record. I've seen 2 predominant patterns in therapy that I've performed through the years. One is the pattern where the same victim is serially assaulted by the same perpetrator year after year. Longest I've ever I can recall is 9 consecutive years, virtually daily for that entire period of time. The second pattern is that one victim has been victimized by 2 or 3 different individuals at different points in time. It doesn't really matter, I mean, in terms of how much trauma they bring to therapy. What I would say is when it's a loved person like your stepfather who's serially raping you for 9 years, it's probably a lot more traumatic and harder to recover from than if it were 1 or 2 or 3 isolated events where you could kind of compartmentalize it. It's still traumatic. So, I mean, you don't get a buy just on the number of episodes. It's more about who was the perpetrator, what was the context, and how much betrayal occurred. I mean, that's what I deal with in therapy.
Thank you, Doctor. Our next question is from Assemblywoman Bilbray Axelrod.
Thank you, Chair. And I know people are like, why is she asking a question that she's a co-sponsor on? That's a good question. But when I signed on to the bill, I did ask you about the term that it says alleged in Section 1, alleged perpetrator or person convicted. And you had said to me that was the same language. And I just want to confirm that that was the reason that that language was already there, which was kind of a piggyback on Assemblywoman Newby's, but I did want to put that on the record because that, you know, do you know what I'm asking? You look, Senator?
Are you in Section 1 where it looks like it's new language at the top?
Yes.
And you're wondering why it says alleged perpetrator?
No, I'm just saying that the penalties would be different because if you're suing in civil court, one, if you have somebody who's already been convicted, it's beyond, they've done beyond reasonable doubt, you don't have in civil. So That was
So-
my concern, but I know it's from existing language, so I just kind of wanted to get that concern on the record.
Of course.
So you don't even really need to answer it.
Okay, yeah.
But
So as
I
you said, it is existing law, but there are times when somebody, I know you're probably thinking of the United States Constitution, which says you can't sue somebody twice for the same crime. However, there's an exception in the law that allows for someone to bring a civil suit, a criminal suit, and then a following civil suit. And there was a very famous football player who there was first a criminal suit where they lost, where the football player won and was found innocent. The party suing lost, and then there was a second civil lawsuit where he was found to be responsible for the 2 deaths of his wife and her friend.
Okay, our next question is from Assemblyman Ornlicker.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for bringing this bill. And as you indicate, it's important that we bring justice to the people who have been victimized, and changing the statute of limitations is important. And thank you, Dr. Cole, for explaining the psychology of all this. I'd like to talk about the other side of the justice that we have to worry about as a Judiciary Committee, and that's why we have statutes of limitations. They often seem very unfair, and but on the other hand, sometimes evidence is distorted, whether it's recollections or physical evidence, and so inevitably, especially because we're in civil court, we're doing preponderance of the evidence not beyond a reasonable doubt, there's a risk of error. One risk of error is that a guilty perpetrator won't be held accountable. The other risk of error is that an innocent accused will be wrongly held accountable. And are there studies in this area that tell us? I can imagine it depends on the case. If you have somebody where there's DNA evidence, we don't have to worry as much about a false conviction. But sometimes you don't have physical evidence. We know eyewitness testimony often isn't reliable. So are there studies in this area that can help us have a sense of what the risk of error will be if we have an unlimited statute of limitations?
Thank you, Assemblyman Ornlicker. So before we go into that specific, I just wanted to say that my colleague, Senator Spearman, testified side by side with me in the Senate. She wasn't available this morning. But something that she said to me rings clear. The reason we have statute of limitations on something as heinous as sexual assault is because all of these seats that you're sitting in right now used to be filled by men. Sorry to make it so blatant. 95% of all victims of sexual assault are women. That's number one. Number two, it's the perfect crime. Ha, ha, ha. Somebody rapes you, they wait 2 years, and now they get away with it, and there's zero justice for the victim, zero. The courtroom doors don't even stay open. You can't even file an action. You can't even file a cause of action. That's wrong. That's not America. Leave the courtroom doors open so somebody can file a cause of action. They still have to find an attorney that'll take the case. They're still going to have to go find their proof, and if they can't, well, no attorney's going to take it. They still have to go in front of a judge. They still have to go in front of a jury of their peers. They still have to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. Just leave the courtroom doors open and let them feel like there's some justice in the world if they have the guts to go forward. Also, the ages of the victims coming to grips of what happened. Dr. Cole testified, and previously we had Dr. Allison Cotton, another psychiatrist specializing in the area who wasn't available this morning, testifying that these victims are not coming forward 20 years later. They're coming forward 40, 50, 60 years later. They're coming forward. She talked about a woman in her 80s who had failed relationship after failed relationship, turning to alcohol, turning to recreational drugs, could never figure out why she went from job to job. And finally, in therapy, an 80-year-old woman, 82 is exactly, told her that she was the victim of rape when she was younger, and she's just never come to grips with it, never admitted it to herself that that's what happened to her. There's so much shame involved in this crime for the victim. So that's what I'm going to share with you, but I'll let Dr. Cole, the expert, talk about specifics.
Be careful of experts. Yeah, people will carry with them for a lifetime what has happened. And it's just not uncommon for me to be in therapy with someone where sexual assault has nothing to do with why they're in therapy now, but it comes up. I mean, it's just the totality of their life. I know for many of my patients, the common denominator was that they blamed themselves. They contributed in some way. I mean, I must have been vulnerable. I must have been provocative. I must have said or done something. He or she misunderstood what I was saying. And so there's a lot of that shame and guilt. And then it just gets repressed year after year, decade after decade, until now they're in their 60s, 70s, or 80s. And I think I'm seeing them for their belligerent behavior related to their dementia. But it turns out they've been sexually assaulted. And they're just able now to talk about it because they're no longer ego defending against it. They're trying not to remember it. And sort of with the breakdown as they age, they're able to better recall because they're not fighting against it. I don't have a study for you. I'm not even sure if the Nuremberg Code would let me do that study. That's what worries me. It's one of those studies you don't want someone to do, but I understand your concern. And I'm going to turn it over to a colleague.
Thank you. Serena Evans for the record. Assemblyman Ortlicker, to your point, I mean, we do need due justice on both sides, right? Sexual assault is the #1 least reported violent crime. It is also the #1 least convicted violent crime. So I think of every 1,000 reported crimes, 3 perpetrators get put in jail. I also know, I will follow up offline because there is a study on the number of sexual assaults that are, people report sexual assault that didn't happen. It is extremely low. No one wants to be a victim survivor of sexual assault. As a victim survivor of sexual assault myself, who did not seek criminal justice or civil justice, I know what it's like. And no one wants to sit here in front of a body and be questioned about their victimhood. So the folks that are coming forward for these civil proceedings, they are traumatized, and it is a way for them to heal and seek justice, and it's giving them just a sliver of hope. And so, you still have to go before a body. You're still, you go on trial. You're going to have the evidence questioned and everything like that. And so people who choose to come forward and seek to go through a criminal justice proceeding, or now maybe potentially a civil proceeding, they're doing so because they're extremely brave. They're not doing it to ruin someone's life or make false claims. They're doing it because that's what feels right for them, to seek justice, to be able to move on. So I'd be happy to follow off offline with those data statistics. I just don't want to misspeak on the record.
May I add a personal touch to this? I don't usually talk about this, but I was sexually assaulted when I was 5. But I didn't realize it till I was a psychiatry resident. My name is Barry Cole, by the way, for the record. And I'm in therapy with a Jungian psychoanalyst, and we're doing all the things you do in therapy. And it dawned on me that the way I had been touched and by whom I was touched by would now legally meet the requirement of a child sex assault, and somebody should go to jail for that. Don't know the kid's name. He was 8, I was 5. It was back in the 1950s. I have vague recollection, but it came out in my own therapy, which is kind of interesting. If you remember, Freud gave up the seduction theory when it dawned on him he had been sexually abused. So he just gives up a whole theory that kids just make this stuff up. That was where he was coming from. So, I get it. It happens to a lot of us. We don't realize it when we're 5. We realize it when we're 30 or when we're 80. But we realize it eventually, and that's the problem. We eventually do remember it.
Thank you. Our next question is from Assemblywoman Cohen.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. Yeah, I do want to make sure we've got a clear record, and I don't know if I need to have legal answer this, but I just want to make sure these cases aren't reasonable doubt cases. This is a civil case. It just needs to be preponderance of the evidence. Okay. Okay, I'm getting a yes. Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure we've got that clear on the record. Thanks.
At this point, I don't see any additional questions, so I will go ahead and open it up for testimony. Anyone here in Carson City that would like to come forward and testify in support of Senate Bill 129? Please make sure before you give your testimony that you state your name and spell it so that it's accurate on the record, please.
Good morning. Thank you for having us here and your service to the state of Nevada. My name is Linda Kirkpatrick, last name spelled Kirkpatrick. I was a resident of Las Vegas for 26 years, during which time, in my early 20s, I was drugged without consent. I was sexually assaulted without my knowledge, for the most part, by a comedian, America's Dad, at the Las Vegas Hilton, as well as actually all three of us sitting here are of that same club, if you will. I don't need to tell you the details. Obviously, I'm a survivor. I wouldn't be sitting here. But what I would like to tell you is every 68 seconds in this country, someone is sexually assaulted. Every 68 seconds. So this hearing started at 8:32. Do the math. 1 in 6 women will be raped. There are 13 of you up there. The statistics are that 2 of you, at least 2 of you, are victims of sexual assault. 1 in 10 men under the age of 17 are victims of sexual assault. Do the math. If those of you that are looking at us are not victims, I would be surprised. I would say you are lucky. You don't have to raise your hand. It's a personal journey that those of us are on. There are no eyewitnesses. There is no, that's how crimers crime. Rapists rape at night. It's not in a dark alley. It's usually, the statistics say, it's someone you know. It's a friend, it's a pastor, it's a neighbor, it's a sibling, or it's a star that no one thinks would ever be guilty of something like that. I can tell you the future as I sit here. I didn't realize what great powers I have. But when Lisa talked about the 82-year-old woman, that's my future. I've been married 4 times. I don't get it. I don't know how this male-female thing works. I'm a successful business owner. I'm a nationally ranked pickleball player, for those of you that knows what that is. I am a badass competitor when it comes to anything except male-female connection. I am broken. I don't understand it. I don't trust men. I didn't know who Dr. Berry was. I can't even look him in the eye. I can barely look any of you men in the eye because I am afraid of you. So I get to be 82 and alone. When my grandchildren say, "Where's your husband?" Which one? Why aren't you married? I can't tell you yet. You're too young. You're 6 and 8. Someday you'll understand. Those of us that are sexual assault survivors, the worst things that I've been told, get over it. Well, what did you think was going to happen? What were you wearing? I've taught my children you should be able to walk down the street naked and be arrested for nudity, but not be raped. We don't ask for this. I suffer every day. I am alone. It's not supposed to be this way. We humans need each other, and years of therapy have given me this. My love and marriage wiring is broken because of my PTSD from sexual assault. I'm bitter where it comes to men, at least I'll admit it. And one thing I won't do on Match.com, oh, I'm a sexual assault survivor, because men automatically think you're bitter, so yeah, I kind of am turning into that person. I am asking you to help us hold these monsters accountable. It's not, you're not going to be the court. We still have to go to court, preponderance of guilt. At least give us that chance. I am asking you to give us some power back. Rape is not about sex, it's about power. They want to control us. Otherwise, there wouldn't be 63 of us if it was just about sex. Actually, there's hundreds of us that are victims of that particular entertainer's criming. My mother had 8 children, 4 boys, 4 girls. Half of us are victims of sexual assault, 1 brother and 3 sisters. My mother was raped in the back of a police car in 1928 at the age of 14. She never told anyone. For the obvious, it takes us so much time to get the strength. I was told by this particular entertainer that I drank too much, and I guess I got the wrong idea about what you wanted, putting it onus on me. And I believed for 36 years that I was the only one, that he was an adulterer, and that I asked for it. Until the wave of strength of women came forward, and I was watching CNN, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and I said, I've been absolved. For 36 years, I thought I was a drunken tramp. But the truth is, I was drugged, I was sexually assaulted, and I'm not alone. So I am asking you, I'm begging you, give us a chance. It's probably not going to make me heal completely, but give us a chance. Maybe it'll pay for all the therapy or all the time that I've traveled here from Arizona. I went to the trials for the unspoken pill giver. Help us repair our shredded soul, because what I live is a life sentence of a murdered soul because of the betrayal of my rapist. Thank you.
Thank you so much to everyone here today. My name is Janice Baker Kinney, Janice Baker-Kinney. I was raped. Those are the 3 most difficult words I've ever had to say. But I was raped in the early 1980s, but I didn't say those 3 words until 2015. I never admitted to being raped because I knew my rapist, and the term acquaintance rape or date rape was not part of the common vernacular at the time. In my case, I accepted a couple pills from this person, an admired and well-known person who I trusted. These pills were much stronger than this person led me to believe and caused me to pass out, which in turn allowed him to rape me while I was in and out of consciousness. So why did I wait over 30 years to call what happened that night actual rape? Because I blamed myself. I re-victimized myself. I was embarrassed, I was humiliated that I had passed out and slept with him. Yes, for 30 plus years I used the words, I slept with that man, because I blamed myself. I justified what he did to me by placing that blame on me. I didn't realize at that time, so long ago, that I was re-victimizing myself. By doing so, I never had to come to terms with what was indeed an actual rape. Coming forward is difficult because of the 30 plus years I denied my assault. I played the self-doubt, second-guessing blame game for decades, as so many victims do after they've been assaulted. Through the encouragement of my family and close friends, I found the strength to make a public statement. It's not easy. That first step, not even close to easy. But the gate had opened, a toxic chain of silence was broken, and there was no turning back. Admitting that one's been a victim of rape is scary and difficult enough to begin with, but in my case, as with my survivor sisters here, there was public shame, public humiliation, the associated stigmas, and the fear that comes with speaking one's truth becomes overwhelming. I was fortunate enough to have an incredible support system, especially from my fellow survivor sisters. And I slowly began to realize that my pain loses some of its power when we share it. But it takes years to share. I had an immediate connection to these women who became my lifeline at that time. And as I began to learn more about each victim and their truths about their assaults, I stopped feeling so alone in my guilt and shame. But this connection that I needed to be with these other survivors left a huge mark on my marriage, because I began to shut down from my husband, and I created this bubble around me of just these women that I could relate to and speak to. Even though my husband was trying to be totally supportive, I shut him out of my life. I had no idea how much burying that night way down deep inside me for so many years would affect me once I finally came forward. And it was new territory with so many new emotions to deal with. There's always still that underlying guilt and shame and blame. But then I had to publicly admit that I was in fact a victim of sexual assault. Luckily, I was fortunate enough to have great insurance and I was able to find a good therapist that helped both me and my husband navigate our way back to each other and encouraged me to communicate my shame to this loving man who was always in my corner, but I couldn't accept his help. My marriage probably wouldn't have survived if I wasn't able to find a great therapist and years of counseling, and I still am in counseling. There are thousands of survivors who are not as lucky and as fortunate as I was to have such a strong support system or able to afford counseling. I can't say any of this has been easy, but it's empowering and liberating. There's so many days still that I never say those 3 words, I was raped. I'll say sexually assaulted still, because I was too smart and streetwise to be raped. So that's why I have had a part in it. You know, I'm not stupid enough to be put in a position to be raped. So it must have been, you know, I had consensual sex, even though I was not aware of it at the time because I was not conscious. I have many days when I have trouble forgiving myself and stop blaming myself. That it's an irrational, nagging voice I have that was buried so long, though. So it's still in the depths of my soul, and it tells me I could not have done anything different to avoid what happened that night. But I would not change one day of my life since I spoke my truth out loud. It has brought me strength and peace and empowered me enough to be able to speak out here before all of you today and on national TV even. Unfortunately, the one thing that it has not brought me is consequences for my rapist. Justice has never been served. By now, almost everybody on this planet has enough information as to why it takes years for most sexual assault survivors to come forward. It's been well documented. You heard that today from our experts, and it's been reported by experts in mental health fields and by victim advocate organizations such as RAIN and PAVE. The Me Too movement has opened up a new avenue of awareness and resources for information as why we wait so long. I commend the leaders in the state of Nevada for extending the statute of limitations for reporting sexual assault to 20 years. But for far too many, in criminal charges, but for far too many of us, that time has long passed. So the current statute of limitations for criminal charges is 20 years. And we've all heard why it takes so long for survivors to come forward. Yet to pursue any civil proceedings, we have to come forward within 2 years. That makes no sense. You have 20 years for criminal charges. It takes sometimes 40 or 50 years to be able to speak your truth. But you have to, if you want to seek any justice, you have 2 years to do that. I don't understand that statute of limitation times. I know we've talked about the reasons for them, but 2 years to 20 years is a big difference for someone to be able to come forward. The only way for justice to be served is for this committee to allow this bill to move forward to be voted on. Several states have already completely abolished the statute of limitations because they are aware of the difficulty and trauma one experiences by reporting this crime. But these new laws are not retroactive. So passing this look-back law, enabling us to seek justice civilly, gives the survivors whose time has passed a chance at seeking the justice we all deserve. It's another step, it's one more step in our healing process. And I'm here today to encourage you to allow this bill to move forward. I appreciate your time and hearing my truth today. Thank you so much.
Number 3 is here. Good morning, Chairman and Assembly Judiciary. My name is Liselott Lublin, Lise-Lotte, Lublin, and I am in support of SB 129. Thank you for your time today. As a survivor of sexual assault, it's been very difficult to process the emotional stress from my assault. I was 23 years old when it happened, and I had been drugged and was incapacitated. I didn't know I had been assaulted for over 25 years. I found out in 2014 when all of these other women came out, and that was the first time I realized what that situation had been. It was very similar to a child. I didn't know. There was some inappropriate touching and things happening, and me not understanding because I didn't understand that my faculties were affected by drugs. I didn't know it was happening. It was something I just didn't know. I continued to admire this person for that 25 years. And same thing, I thought I did something wrong. I thought I shamed myself for passing out and not understanding why I passed out. Didn't make any sense. It was very difficult to deal with. To say the least, it's been a struggle. This is not my first time talking to the committee and asking you to support to change a law. I'm here to give a voice to my community and to work on healing some of my own pain. I want you to know that changing laws has been the most influential impact on my mental health when dealing with my assault. As much as I would love to stand up in front of a judge and explain to all of you the details of my assault, it still scares me to talk about it. My heart and soul wants to fight back, but I don't always feel ready. I haven't cried like this during a testimony for years. This is powerful and important change, and we need it. All of us, all those children that are out there that are going to grow into adults, the adults that have already been out there and too afraid. We need help. And you guys can help us. I will fight back, and I'm always going to fight back. But I need to do it on my terms. I'm just asking for the opportunity to process my emotional pain in a way that best fits with my timeline. And having a statute stifles that process. Changing the SOL can help, or abolishing the SOL can help heal other survivors and myself and give us back some control over the assault, allowing us to preserve the spirit of our lives. Today I'm here with my family and my survivor sisters to plead our case for equal, fair, and equitable opportunity just to the justice system. I'm asking you to equalize the law with the laws that protect our children now, include the opportunity to protect our human right as adults by eliminating the statute of limitations. Please consider the great service you would provide survivors by giving back the power to the justice system through supporting this bill and allowing us our due process in the best possible way that works for us. And that's leaving the courtroom doors open for any kind of a chance. Even if it's a failed chance, it's still an opportunity for us to fight. We win when we have the chance to fight, even if someone else doesn't allow it to be that way. We have only one or two ways to fight back. And criminal and civil court are two of those ways. So we just want you to give us that chance. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Miller, Vice Chair, Judiciary Assembly. My name is Benjamin Lublin, B-E-N-J-A-M-I-N, last name Lublin, L-U-B-L-I-N. I am here today in support of SB 129. I'm sorry I'm low, but I don't like seeing my wife in a certain state. Chair Miller, I'm from your district. I actually met you when you were trying to be elected. It's good to see you. I appreciate this opportunity. We're just looking for justice. I know there's a lot of questions asked about, what if there are false accounts? What if people come forward and they make up something? Statistically, and I used to be a lot sharper back in 2015. We changed the law. It was from 2 years to 4 years criminally.
4 years to 20.
I'm sorry, 4 years to 20 criminally. I used to be a lot sharper, so I had all of that, but statistically it's extremely low. I mean, we're talking
It's like
1%. And I will say that we're looking at SB 129 to be in line with children of sexual assault in civil court. We're just going to go ahead and place what already the law is, and it's already there. It's already in play for children. We're looking for adults now. 2 years is ridiculous for a sexual assault survivor to come forward. It's 3 years for damage to property in civil court. But a rape and sexual assault of a human being is 2 years. If that's not ridiculous, I don't know what is. I think that, I sit here with my fellow friends, and it took me 25 years to come forward and talk to my wife about being sexually assaulted. I'm a 46-year-old man and I am still dealing with being shamed, in denial. How can you expect 2 years? I'm born and raised in Las Vegas, Nevada. I bleed Nevada blue. I know you guys love this state, and I plead with you, I beg with you, to give sexual assault survivors the ability to find justice. It's not about money. It's about justice. We have two forms of justice in this land, and it's criminal and civil. Criminal, I have nothing. Civil, I have nothing. I beg you, give us our chance. We still have to prove it in front of a jury, in front of a judge. We still have to go ahead and have evidence. I understand your concern, but it's not he said, she said, and a jury is going to go ahead and just say, you know what, you're guilty. I really do believe that. I really do believe that you have to have evidence. I really do believe that you have to have something there in place. There has to be some proof. Maybe not beyond a reasonable doubt, but I wouldn't believe in this law if I thought that just regular human beings could just be called out and thrown, not thrown in jail. I wish that we could have civil court, not that I wish they would be just be regular human beings. I'm sorry I said that wrong. I wish that we had no statute of limitations for sexual assault and criminal, but I just wish that we had that chance that that we deserve. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little off track. I got a little emotional. This is our fifth bill. We've worked with criminal. We worked for children of sexual assault. We worked on rape kit backlog with Becky Harris, Irene Bustamante Adams, Lisa Krusner, which is a great woman. I surround myself with amazing people, and I believe that every single one of you are amazing people. You are here, you are voted in, you are elected. Chair Miller, you're a part of my district. I voted for you. Every one of us has a responsibility to our community. We as community members are coming to you and asking you, please give us our chance. I respect every single one of you. And I appreciate more than 2 minutes. I was told I was done for. That's it. And thank you so much.
Good morning. I am Sabrina Lublin. Sabrina, S-A-B-R-I-N-A, Lublin, L-U-B-L-I-N. Today we heard a lot about statistics and a lot about probabilities and, the average. And I think it's very important to realize that these statistics are real and they're proven and they're very, they're true. And I think when it comes to especially survivors, they rely on a lot of, they rely on justice a lot. And coming from a 16-year-old, I rely on that justice as well. And a lot of people here today are speaking for the people from the past, but I am speaking for the people of the present and the future. Because this bill, will impact not only me, but the brothers, the sisters, and the children of the future. And I am in ROTC, and my instructor, he told me about how his daughter was sexually assaulted. And he told me that how he was terrified for his other children and how he was scared that if that were to happen to them, especially with this, the statute of limitations, his daughter has no way of getting that reconciliation that she needs. So, not only for her, but for high school students, children, anybody from the future and now, this will definitely give them the opportunity to move forward and definitely give them the opportunity to come to terms and hold that perpetrator accountable. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I am Simon Lublin, SIMONLUBLIN, and today I'm here to read my statement in support of SB 129. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak now. It's very important that I am able to. I will say that it's very easy to say that sexual assault is bad. I'm sure we can all agree on that. However, when you are reading about it and when you don't have people up here crying in front of you, it looks more just like two words, sexual assault. And it's very easy to reduce that down and think of it simply in, I guess, legal terms. However, it's much harder to actually do something about it. When you hear that somebody has been sexually assaulted, you feel for them, you give your condolences, but there's not much else that you can do. Right now, this bill is something that we can do. This is something that can be used to take an actual change, and while people may come out and protest, this is truly doing something. This is actually changing laws and going through, as my parents had said, the only two ways that we have for justice, the civil and criminal court. Thank you for your time.
Good morning. My name is Susan Reed. I am a lifelong resident of Reno, Nevada, and I'm here to support Senate Bill 129. Thank you.
I don't know if you all hear it too often, and I don't know if it means anything or enough or too much, but when I say we do appreciate your courage, we know it takes beyond human strength to come into a public place and tell your story. So I want you to know that we absolutely appreciate it. There are people who are afraid of public speaking. There are people that are nervous and anxious to testify on bills that deal with taxes or property or something mundane. But the courage it takes, the superhero strength it takes, not just to get up and survive every day, to fight every day, but to come in public and share your story to help others, please know it is deeply appreciated and recognized. And as our senator would say, I mean, may all legislatures be female majority. With that, please continue with your testimony and support.
Good morning, Chair Miller and Assembly members. I'm Drew Franklin, DREWFRANKLIN with R&R Partners. I'm here representing Awaken today. This bill will ensure that victims are able to seek civil action when they are ready. We are in support of SB 129 and would like to thank everybody who's come out to speak today. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Miller and members of the committee. My name is Beth Schmidt, SCHMIDT. I represent the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. Chair Miller, I want to start by echoing exactly what you have said. I want to recognize and I want to commend the men and women who've come before us and told their stories and that you've allowed them the time to do that. The LVMPD believes that the extension of the civil action timeframe. It is an important additional resource for victims of sexual assault. We want to thank the Senator for bringing this bill forward, and LBMPD is in support of SB 129.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee, staff. My name is Rick McCann, Nevada Association of Public Safety Officers and a member of the Nevada Law Enforcement Coalition. I want to thank Senator Krasner and those who are co-sponsors and joint sponsors for bringing this bill. I testified in behalf of it before the Senate, and I had a lot of cool comments. They're right here. You know what? I don't give a shit. Listen to these people here. The people you have just heard are the experts. I'm not. I've not been in that position. Listen to them, pass this bill, and do it as soon as you can. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman Miller and members of the Assembly Judiciary Committee. Mary Sarah Kinner, MarySarahKinner, on behalf of the Washoe County Sheriff's Office, and I will just echo Mr. McCann's comments. We are in support of this legislation and thank the women who have testified here and men this morning. Thank you.
Is there anyone else here in Carson City that would like to testify in support of SB 129? Is there anyone in Las Vegas? Not seeing anyone. Broadcasting, will you open the lines, please?
To testify in support of Senate Bill 129, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits 289, you are unmuted and may begin.
This is Heidi Thomas, Heidithomas. Good afternoon, Chair Miller and members of the committee. I am calling from Castle Rock, Colorado. I was not able to be there in person today, but I am holding hands with every one of my survivor sisters that you've heard from there in person this morning. Their stories are my story. I'm thanking you for your time, and I'm thanking you for listening today. I'm asking that you allow others to also be heard by supporting Senate Bill 129. I had my testimony for today printed out, ready to go. But Sunday night, I learned that one of my 3 adult daughters had been sexually assaulted 4 years ago. She has walked beside me as I went public regarding my own assault 31 years after it occurred. She has been my cheerleader on the work that I've done to change laws here in Colorado and bring perpetrators of this crime to justice. And yet this crime seems to have the same effect on everyone in the way it paralyzes one's mental and emotional processing. My daughter's assailant was a bigwig client of her company, and the money he brought in was significant. So even though she's been a part of my work, even knowing so many victim stories, she found herself unable to process her assault. Because this is so common, people have learned to just stay quiet and try to move forward. Now, one of my daughter's co-workers has been sexually assaulted by the same man. And my daughter is not just reliving her assault, she's dealing with the guilt of not reporting her assault 4 years ago. The process for recovery from sexual assault is often as emotionally traumatic as the crime itself. So telling a victim that they need to be able to report the details, relive the assault, speak in front of strangers within some arbitrary time frame set by strangers is like another assault. If they aren't emotionally capable of the necessary steps in the process of healing, they just forfeit their right to any kind of justice. We are also more and more aware of DFSA, drug-facilitated sexual assault. My assault and rape occurred somewhere within an hour of Reno. I don't know exactly where, as I was kidnapped and drugged. Victims of drug-facilitated sexual assault cannot remember the details, but we know we've been violated. And the perpetrators count on this. It's referred to as the perfect crime. After decades of learning about this, I truly believe that the perpetrators have no idea that what they do leaves scars for life. The numbers you've heard today are almost inconceivable. Think about your own children, your nephews, your nieces. Think about those numbers. The chances are overwhelming that you've got victims of sexual assault in your families. Do you think the mental health crisis in our country is just coincidental? I don't. I can only wonder what kind of healing might happen if criminals were held responsible and accountable for the lives that they've destroyed. You might hear others say that this bill violates somebody's liberty, someone's rights to a swift trial. Having any kind of limits placed on a crime that affects victims for the rest of their lives does not honor the liberties and rights of those who have endured this crime. The perpetrators need to be held accountable. And often, I think they need treatment so they don't repeat and continue to assault others. You've also heard today, this is not going to flood the courts with a deluge of long overdue cases. People still need evidence to proceed to a trial, but at least the option is available, and they know they can be heard. I tell you from personal experience and what you have heard here today, victims of sexual assault spend every day for the rest of their lives putting themselves back together. Every morning, every day. They deserve the right to justice when they're emotionally strong enough for the fight. I ask that you give them that opportunity and pass this bill. Thank you for your time.
Chair member, members of the Assembly Judiciary Committee, my name is John Jones, here on behalf of the Nevada District Attorneys Association in support of SB 129. Giving sexual assault survivors the time and space they need to process their trauma and determine the best course of action is important public policy. We want to thank Senator Krasner for bringing the bill, and we urge its passage. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Amanda Vasco, V-A-S-K-O-V. I serve as the Director of Government Affairs for the Associated Students of the University of Nevada. That's our undergraduate student population at UNR, and the majority of our population is over the age of 18. In a multi-year survey at UNR, 22% of students surveyed reported instances of unwanted touching. 1/3 of students surveyed who experienced assault told no one. Amongst the reasons for telling no one were concerns along the lines of feeling like I couldn't be believed or not really realizing that an assault could happen in a relationship, and more. Reasons like these preventing a victim survivor from coming forward can persist for a long time. More profoundly, however, is that the pain caused by sexual assault can unfortunately last a lifetime. The Associated Students of the University of Nevada support this bill and its efforts to allow victims, survivors, and our peers to come forward and seek damages, should they choose to, on their own time and when they're ready. Thank you.
There are no other callers to testify in support at this time.
Thank you. Then I will open it up for testimony in opposition of SB 129. I don't see anyone here in Carson City or Las Vegas. Broadcasting, is there anyone on the line?
There are no callers to testify in opposition at this time.
Thank you. I will open it up for testimony in neutral of SB 129. Not seeing anyone here in Carson City or Las Vegas. Broadcasting, is there anyone on the line?
There are no callers to testify in neutral at this time.
Thank you. Then I will welcome Senator Krasner back up for any final remarks. Senator does not want to return to make any final remarks. So with that, again, thank you for your presentation and thank you for everyone who came forward and testified. And with that, I will go ahead and close the hearing on SB 129. Our last item on the agenda today is public comment. Again, public comment is for anything that's not dealing with the two bills that we heard today. So if there's anyone here in Carson City that would like to come forward for public comment. Not seeing anyone here in Carson or Las Vegas. Broadcasting, is there anyone on the line?
To provide public comment, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. There are no callers choosing to provide public comment at this time.
Thank you so much. With that, I will go ahead and close public comment. Just a few reminders for tomorrow before we adjourn. Members, tomorrow we do have committee pictures at 8:30 a.m. in here. And of course, tomorrow is Denim Day, so if you're participating, please just make sure that you're wearing something picture appropriate on top, still your suit jackets and such with your denim. So we will start committee. Our hearings and agenda will begin at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning for everyone, but members will be in here at 8:30. With that, seeing no additional business before us, this meeting is adjourned.